My name is Tim Daniel, and we are back. Welcome to the revival of Late Night Reds Talk Live, now part of the Riverfront. I am so excited to have this show back. I have missed it so much. I had to get one of our really good friends to be our guest today to have a really fun conversation. You can see him here with them. You can check him out at resminorleague.com. Mr. Doug Gray. Doug, how are you, my man?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back on the show, and I guess you're back on a new platform, network, whatever we want to call it. It's
Yeah,
good to have you back, Tim.
I'm so happy to be back. Like I said in my video, I just couldn't let this go to waste. I was like missing it so much. I was like, I can't go to the season not doing Reds content. So Chad and Nate reached out to me and they said, "What do you think about taking this to the Riverfront?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." So we're excited. So we're going to be here every Sunday at 9 p.m. My goal is to have a guest regularly every week. So I'm going to be working on that. We have booked someone for next week as well. So before we get started, we have some good conversations with Doug and get his thoughts on spring training so far. Gonna have to go real quick and go ahead and go through. First off, make sure you're following Riverfront Cincy everywhere on all socials. They're, Chad, Nick, Nate, and the guys, they're all taking care of things. They have the Bengals show, they have their regular show, and us live here Sunday nights. Also, if you're not already, go become a member of the Patreon at patreon.com/riverfrontcincy. Come become part of the family. And also join Doug's Patreon at redsminorleague.com so you can get some really good content there. I can't keep you from getting a payday. So I had to make sure I got that in. But all right, guys. So before we get into some conversations, I want to make sure I get this. So I mentioned earlier in the week, for those who are tuning in for our first episode, I have this here Chase Petty Bowman Inception autograph card. It is at a 99. And how you get this card, how you enter the contest is a little Reds trivia ski. I'll give the answer at the end of the episode. Whoever can give me the most correct answers at the end of the show will be the winner. So, Doug, you might know this. I don't know. So, Joey Votto is one of 12 athletes to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a member of the Cincinnati Reds. Who are the other 11?
I mean, I don't know all 11. I'll be honest about that one
That's okay. It's I didn't know all 11 till there's one I
until
was
you
like,
looked it up.
yeah, I was texting Chad about it. I was like, what can I do as like a fun like thing to kind of keep people like involved in the show? And I was like, what if I do this? And I'll do a contest thing. And he was like, yeah, give it a shot. We'll see what happens. So yeah. So if you can give us the other 11 in the chat by the end of the show, I will unveil the answers. The first one to get that to us, we will go ahead and send you out this Chase Petty auto card. And we're going to get Doug's thoughts on Chase Petty later as well. So I'm excited about that. Um, let's go ahead, Doug. Let's talk a little about the week that was with this team. So spring training has been, mixed emotions, like all spring trainings. Monday they get the win. Alan Cerda and CES homer. Tuesday TJ Friedel hits a home run with goes 2 for 3. Wednesday we see Austin Hendricks show his big league power. Thursday Hunter Green throws 4 shutout innings. It is named the opening day starter. Have a little split squad action Friday where they split games, but we see Ellie De La Cruz flash his speed. Yesterday they lose to the Rangers. Jake Fraley hits a home run, and today a big loss at 8-1 to the Dodgers. But Joey Votto has his first 2 at bats of spring. Grant Ashcraft does pitch, looks pretty good, then leaves early. Looking at the week that was, what are some of the impressions you take away from what we saw in the field?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is what happened today. Joey Votto got back on the field. I think that storyline kind of works two different ways. I think that one, is Joey going to be ready for opening day? But two, I think that also plays into whether Christian Encarnacion Strand has a chance and an opportunity to make the team. One of the things is if Joey Votto wasn't ready, who was going to play first base? Christian Encarnacion Strand has been killing the ball all year or all spring. Granted, it's 15, 16 games or something like that. But I think that really would have opened up an opportunity for him. And it's still possible. Joey had mentioned yesterday that, he wasn't sure if he was going to be ready for opening day or not. And it's not really something that, if he's back now, willing to play in games, if he is going to be out to begin the season, it's not going to be for very long, unless he has some sort of setback that, at this point would be unforeseen. But yeah, I think also, it's one of those situations where, this could be Joey Votto's last year as a Red. And we haven't really talked too much about that, from a fan standpoint. What happens if it's August and the Reds haven't made a decision or a public determination of, hey, are we going to bring Joey Votto back? I think that's an interesting storyline that I'm looking forward to this year as far as following Joey, just in case it is his last year as a Red. But yeah, that was my biggest takeaway this week is that Joey's back on the field. But the underlining stories is the young guys they're still impressing out there.
Yeah, they've been so much fun. We've Christian Encarnacion Strand has obviously kind of been the highlight of spring. The Reds tweeted yesterday some of his stats, and he was like just unbelievable,
leading the world in every single stat.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Let's see here. Clay Christian, is there a chance Votto doesn't play the way he thinks he's capable and quits mid-season? I doubt that, Clay, because he's the most motivated human being I think I've ever seen. I can't see him pulling like a Ken Griffey Jr. and just being like, I just don't have it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. He had mentioned before the season started, somebody had asked him, I think it was Chris Rose, but I don't want to be, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was. And, he asked me, if you don't feel right, like, would you retire? And he basically said, you're asking me to leave a lot of money on the table. I mean, even if it's mid-season, you're asking Joey Votto to leave half of his salary this year plus a $7 million buyout next year. I mean, that's $25-30 million for him to leave it on the table. I mean, I think that I'd have to be playing really, really, really bad to walk away from that. And I mean, I don't think he'd do that.
Yeah, because I think what had happened with Griffey in 2010, I think he was like on the vet minimum in Seattle at that point. Like he was basically just like going with the motions at that point. Was like, yeah, I'm ready to go home. And like I think it's just got a different scenario there. But yeah,
plus we're still paying him for the next decade and a half. So
yeah, there you go. He's fine. No, he's not hurting whatsoever. Yeah, you mentioned obviously, so Christian Encarnacion Strand has been putting this outstanding spring together. The young guys who are just so impressive and just been so fun. Ellie De La Cruz, obviously, anytime he's on the field, it's electric. Hitting a triple off a Roldis Chapman, off like that was pretty awesome. That was pretty cool to see. And then, had a triple again the other day, flashing his speed and his abilities. But other guys obviously standing out. So Will Benson is obviously a guy who's making his names around the Reds fandom. He's, playing center field most days. He's stealing bases. He was a really late move in spring, really a good move for the Reds in spring. I shouldn't say spring, like right before spring in the off season. And he's a guy that I don't know if I'm at the point where I say like Will Benson, major league center fielder every day, but do you feel like I do? And if you disagree, I'm totally cool with that he's at least earned the right to be in the conversation for that role.
I mean, I think so. I mean, what's his competition right now? Nick Senzel, who hasn't played a game yet this spring. I mean, they just optioned Michael Ciani back to AAA. I don't really think that Ciani was really in the conversation unless some injuries went down. Stuart Fairchild can play center, but I don't think the Reds have ever really viewed him as a center field option unless they had to. They just needed somebody to put out there. I think that with the combination of Senzel's performance the past couple of years and not playing in games yet, not really knowing what he can do coming off of toe surgery, and then what Will Benson did last year in AAA, where he drastically cut his strikeout rate down and performed much better than he ever has in the past. And then, of course, what he's done this spring. I mean, I really think that you have to give him a serious look. As maybe move him around a little bit when Senzel's healthy and kind of see what happens there. But I mean, if I were making the call right based on what we know right now, I think that he's got to be your opening day center fielder.
I agree. I really do. And look, I think TJ Friedl's had a really good spring. I think he's been really good. And he's probably the other guy in that conversation, right? Like at this point. And his ceiling is probably fourth outfielder in this circumstance. And that's not a dig on him. Like that's, Chris Heisey was a damn good fourth outfielder for this franchise for a long time. But, I think at this point, Will Benson's on the right. He's electric. He's stealing bases. And I know a lot of that is the new rules as far as the new bigger bags is jumping in. But, I think a lot of the issues that people are having, and you would know this better than I would, is there's concerns about his ability to consistently play center field. But this is Great American Ballpark that he's going to be playing in, and this is a place where we saw Shin-Soo Choo play center field for a long time, who probably hadn't played that since like the Double A season that he had in the Seattle system. And with his speed and his ability to track balls down, I don't think it's much of a concern. Now, when they play in San Francisco on the road, maybe you think about other options there. But I think he's shown his athletic ability to track balls down. He had some really nice diving catches so far. I think he's just been a blast to watch, and it's yeah. I think that he makes a really interesting conversation for sure. I'm trying to think who else I want to ask you about. So we're going to get into some of the transactions a little later here, but it was mentioned on Thursday after Hunter Green's start. They did declare him the opening day starter. So he's had a mixed bag of results. And, I get it. It's spring training. It's a lot of like taking risks to kind of get in grooves. And he looked really, really good in that game against the Cubs. He had 4 innings, like I said. He no earned runs, had 3 Ks. The game before against Texas was a little different. He's kind of throwing a lot of fastballs high and in to guys who strictly hit fastballs high and in. But between him and Lodolo, I think really you don't have an issue with 1 or 2 by any means. But what was are you kind of surprised they made that decision? Do you kind of feel like, would you have leaned towards Lodolo in that circumstance? How did you feel about that conversation?
I personally, one or two, it doesn't really matter. I'd have been very
Same.
comfortable with either one of those guys. I can understand why you went with Hunter Green over Nick Lodolo. With the way that Hunter Green closed down the year last year in the last month, I mean, he was basically unhittable. I think he had like 8 walks and 51 strikeouts in 35 innings and gave up like 3 runs. I mean, he was just absolutely dominant down the stretch. And that's not to say that Nick Lodolo wasn't good last year at all. He was very good. If you look at the overall season, he was better than Hunter Green was. But with the way that Green closed things down last year, and I mean, I I know our old buddy Carlos is gonna yell at me over this one because he mentioned it on Twitter when I was kind of making a joke about it. But if you put Lodolo between Hunter Green and Graham Ashcraft, it's a little bit of a different look.
Yeah.
If you're gonna face all 3 of those guys in the same series, which that may not happen every series, but putting a lefty in between 2 guys that throw 100 miles an hour from the right side, it is a little bit of a different look. Now, how much of a difference that actually makes, who knows? I mean, well, some people know. I don't. I never faced off against major league pitchers, and it wouldn't matter which one I was facing anyways because I'm not going to do anything but stand there and hope I don't get hit. Um, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference in my opinion. They're both very good. So
Yeah, it feels like it's like the upside of the 2 is so fun, right? Because, it's something where you haven't had that in the city in a long ever? Maybe not even a long time. Is ever the right answer there?
I don't think ever is the right word here now.
Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I'm struggling. Maybe Cueto and
I mean, Cueto and Latos were really, really
they were
good.
really good. You're right. Yeah.
Cueto and Homer Bailey for that year and a half, 2-year stretch where Homer Bailey was really
Oh,
good.
touche.
Jose Rijo and I don't even care who else was in the rotation
Tom Browning,
from 88
yeah.
to 90. Like, yeah.
Okay, you're right. You're right. And it
And
wasn't
that's just my lifetime that I can remember off the top of my head. I know the Reds had a few other good pitching staffs at some point in the previous 100 years, but
yeah, you're right. So maybe ever wasn't the right word there. So I appreciate the concept there. And then probably the last thing before we move on, because I do want to kind of get your thoughts on the new C Trent's article he had on the Athletic the other day, is Jake Fraley. I think Jake Fraley is a guy who, obviously came in last year, was really good when he came back from injury, is kind of picking up where he left off this spring so far. What is kind of your thoughts on him moving forward? Because I feel like, he kind of has that like really good favorable situation against righties. Maybe, what do you kind of see as kind of his role with this team moving into the season?
I mean, I think he's a platoon hitter. I don't think you put him out there against lefties unless you have to.
Sure.
I mean, he absolutely crushes right-handed pitching, or at least he has for the last year and a half. I think that's pretty much his role. Put him in left field against right-handed pitchers and let him rake. And if they bring in a lefty out of the bullpen, hey, thanks for helping us out the first 5 innings. We're going to go in another. We're going to send somebody in off the bench, and that's a good role for him. And in today's game, being a platoon player from the left side, that's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
That used to be something teams didn't really do too much with the platooning thing, but the game's different now. starting pitchers go 5 innings. If they're really good, they'll go 6 innings, and then you're facing 3 or 4 different relievers out of the bullpen that they bring all kinds of different looks, and it's just a different game. And being pinch hit for later in the game isn't the insult that it used to be necessarily.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, like you said, I don't want to compare him to Jesse Winker because that's kind of what Winker kind of could have been because Winker was an all-star, obviously, but it has kind of that vibe that he had here. Um, Maybe not so much the vibes he had in Seattle from everything that's come out since then, but someone I'm really excited about is Jake Fraley for sure. So, kind of talking about different things here. So, I want to kind of get your thoughts on this conversation. So, Trent Rosecrans, part of the Athletic, friend of the program, friend of the Riverfront, put out his opening day roster predictions. This is, of course, on Thursday. So this is before Joey Votto made his return for spring training. And kind of want to go through here real quick. So the catchers, we already know Tyler Stevenson with the game plan they have for him between catching, first base, and DH. Kurt Casale and Luke Maley, they plan on them making the team. On the infield, you got India, Barrero, Spencer Steer, who looks like he's going to be the starting third baseman, Kevin Newman, and Chad Pinder. And the outfield, we've got Will Myers, Jake Fraley, TJ Friedel, Henry Ramos, and Brett Benson. Will Myers also having the ability to play first base. The rotation looks like Hunter Green, Lodolo, Ashcraft, Luis Sessa, and Luke Weaver. And then, which with some couple guys competing there. And then, of course, the relievers, Alexis Diaz, Lucas Sims, Reaver San Martin, Buck Farmer, Ian Jabot, Fernando Cruz, Casey Legamina, and Hunter Strickland. When it comes to this, do you have anything you kind of, or do you have a thought even on like maybe guys you agree with or disagree with, guys you think you would pencil in over others?
I mean, in the outfield, Henry Ramos is a big question mark. He's out playing in the World Baseball Classic right now, so he's not even with the team. Just kind of, he's going to be the final outfielder in that scenario that Trent laid out. So, not a big issue there for me, but I think that his spot is up for debate. The relievers, the last couple of guys, who knows? I mean, Casey Legamina got lit up today. I think his ERA is like 11.86 right now. Whereas when Trent posted this, I'm not sure he had given up an earned run yet.
Yeah.
Things can change pretty quickly. I mean, we're still in. I mean, it's not even quite mid-March yet. And I trust Derek Johnson to make these decisions a lot more than me looking at stats and watching 1 out of every 5 games on TV. Hunter Strickland, I don't know, man. Like he struggled this spring too. And I mean, I think there was, after the first month last year, he was a solid reliever for the Reds, but he wasn't really standing out. And that he struggled this spring kind of makes me just. But again, what are the other options? I just don't know, because the Reds kind of just they didn't go out and do too much in free agency, and they were kind of relying on guys coming back that were injured last year, which I can sort of understand. I wish they would have done more. As a fan, I think that it would have been nice to see some sort of commitment to more than hoping and praying that things go right for you, and actually planning to improve and hope that the other things you were hoping for work. And then you've got a problem on your hands where you've got too many good players rather than 7 guys you're hoping to return to something they used to be. And I don't know. And then just the rotation. After those top 3 guys. I mean, at this point, I don't even care who they put in there. It's a question mark for me. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know Chase Anderson obviously struggled quite a bit in his last start. Was that yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday. And so that was kind of a shocking thing there. But hey, well, what's up? So we're getting all of a sudden out of the blue, all of our comments popped in. So that was pretty random. Sorry about that.
Technology's fun, right?
Isn't it, man? Isn't it? Oh, man, we have a lot to catch up on. Here's one what are your thoughts on this? Souza over Strickland, another left-handed option in the pen.
I don't know. Souza is, I mean, he's the last guy that's going to be in your bullpen if he would make the team. Again, it's one of those situations where none of the options are good. I don't have trust or faith in any of those last guys in the rotation or bullpen situation. But one of the things is like Luis Sessa was projected to be in the rotation. If for whatever reason he doesn't make the rotation, whether it's he's not ready to start right away, or they go another direction, that cuts off a spot in the bullpen that would have been available to somebody else because they're going to have Luis Cessa on the team if he's healthy. So,
yeah. Well, thank you, Branch. I appreciate it. We do have an answer, just so you know. We do have the correct answer in the chat. I will unveil that later on, who the winner of that. But Doug, there was some transactions made the past couple days, and there's one I really, really want to get your thoughts on because I didn't see it till right before we went live. Our good friend Carlos put this in the Riverfront Slack. Things you can get if you're part of the Patreon, the Riverfront Slack
hey,
chat. It's really, really cool, actually. I'm having fun in there. But some of the roster moves. So Leon Richardson, Chucky Robinson, Nick Solak, Jared Solomon, Levi Stout, this was as of yesterday, were reassigned to minor league camp. And then today, we had some roster moves. For Noelvi Marte was reassigned to Double A Chattanooga. And you mentioned earlier Michael Ciani to AAA Louisville. So that puts 54 guys remaining in camp. So Noelvi Marte is an interesting one. Not that I thought he was going to make the team by any means because we knew where he was. And we're going to talk about your prospect rankings here in a little bit. But the quote comes out today from David Bell. And it's where he kind of mentions, and I'm paraphrasing, that, yeah, he can play shortstop, but third base is the spot for him. And so kind of curious your thoughts on that, because obviously this team is going into this season with Spencer Steer basically going to be more than likely exhausting his rookie eligibility playing third base and being the starting third baseman. And we've talked about this. This has been the topic of all these guys they acquired in these trades last year of like, where do you play all of these guys? So what are your thoughts on that conversation as far as Marte being a potential third baseman?
he had never played third base before until last year when they sent him to the Arizona Fall League. And at the time, I was told, hey, we just want to get him experience there, see how it goes, because there may not be an opportunity for him to play shortstop. Because, as we all can see, the Reds have a lot of different options at shortstop. Some of them that are ahead of him, like Jose Barrero, Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, possibly. They went out and they got Kevin Newman. I don't think that the Reds would let Kevin Newman block Noelvi Marte at shortstop unless he just turned into a completely different player than we've ever seen him be before. But, there's a lot of options at shortstop. And so, they wanted to get a look, get him experience there. And, he got his feet wet, and it was, I think it's like 14 or 15 games, not a ton, but, they've been playing him there again this spring. And, a lot of people felt that, he may wind up there in the long run anyways. He's not a small guy. He's not, too big to play shortstop, but he doesn't quite look like your typical 1990s shortstop either. I know that we've gotten quite a few larger shortstops since then, but
Yeah.
he's got a cannon for an arm. And so, it's not a move that would really be out of the realm of possibility any way you wanted to look at it. And so, why not? See what happens, especially because he does have all that experience at shortstop. He can move back there if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, it's the opposite of Suarez, right? Where it's like he played shortstop out of necessity and it didn't go well. This is a situation where it's like, if we need him to, we can put him there, and it's a plus for your team. Because like you mentioned, all those guys, Ellie De La Cruz, who is like pretty adamant, like, dude, I'm a shortstop. Like, I know there's a lot of conversations about maybe center field, maybe this. He's like, no, I am with the game plan of I'm going to be a shortstop in the major leagues, and like, I'm with it. I love it. We talked on the show last year, and I'm, maybe get your thoughts on this, but obviously defensive metrics do not favor Jonathan India at second base as far as his ability to be a really consistent, good defensive player there. Is he a guy you maybe look at in the future as potentially strictly a DH or an outfielder? Well, maybe not strictly DH now, but or part of the future of this team with all these guys that are drafted to play middle infield.
Well, I'll start off by saying this. I don't really put too much emphasis on infield defensive stats. I think there's way too much that goes on that you just can't really. I don't know. Outfield defensive stats, I've got way more faith in than infield defensive stats.
Okay.
Now, part two of that is Jonathan India wasn't healthy last year for the most part, especially in the second half. He had a leg injury. That's going to slow you down. We saw that his sprint speed, I saw that his sprint speed like really dropped off after the leg injury at the Field of Dreams game. And so, that's going to affect the defensive metrics. What does he look like when he's fully healthy? Because that's a very different Jonathan India, both in the field and at the plate. I think that if you get rookie Jonathan India at the plate, you can give up a little bit of defensive value. So I don't know. I think that at least right now the Reds probably have zero plans of moving Jonathan Indy off of second base or considering any plans of him not being on the team. Um, but it's a situation where they do have options if that presents itself. I just don't think that they're going to really consider many of those options anytime soon, just because I think that they're planning around Jonathan India being around for quite a while, and I think that they probably look back at last year as a hey, he was playing through injury a lot, and that probably did affect some of the outcomes. So let's see what happens.
I 1,000% agree with you because I know a lot of people were very disappointed. And look, I think coming off the hype of being rookie of the year is I get it. I get the disappointment, but like you said, just the injury. And I know he's not hitting great, in the spring training, but I'm not worried about that. I don't think you're worried about that necessarily either from conversations I've had with you. I think that he looks like he's fast again, and that's fun to watch. He looks like he's running the bases well when he's on the base. So, Tyler Stevenson's not hitting well either, but I'm not worried about him. I feel like those two are kind of the guys we're game planning, the franchise around. And I think that's why they put this plan for Tyler Stevenson together. Um, that was a conversation way too many times we had last year of is he better than this, or this? And it's like, he's better in the lineup, and we're just going to go with that. Yeah, it's a really dynamic situation there. And I think, like you said earlier, we want this team to get to a situation where they have too many good players instead of like hoping for these players. And this is like what they're trying to build. You can say what you will about, what they have and haven't done as far as acquisitions. I think they did a really good job with the trades they got last year. I think trying to build that farm system up. I mean, obviously your job gets a lot better, a lot more fun when you're like looking up these really exciting prospects on a day-to-day basis and watching them play. So I think they did a good job of that, which is a great segue, Doug. Are you ready to talk about your prospect list?
I hope so. I hope you do not surprise me somehow, some way.
Well, I took it straight from your site. So if you do sue me, my lawyer is Chad Dotson.
I know that guy.
Chad Dotson. Here's actually a really good point. I do agree with this. I think the rule changes will be really good for India. I think they'll be good for Votto too because he like had tons of balls hit right at people last year with switches. So I can't wait for that. I actually do. I forgot to put a slide on there. If you want to hang out for a little bit after we go through this, I want to get your thoughts on WBC too, if you're cool with that.
I got plenty of time.
Perfect. So Doug Gray on RedsMinorLeagues.com put together his top 25 prospect list. I believe, how recent is this, Doug? Is this last week that you updated this?
No, I think it's been since the first week of November.
Okay.
Yeah, I do it right after the season, the major league season is over. So I've got full information on anybody who was called up, during the year and all that fun stuff.
Okay, cool. So one name obviously that we've already talked about is Christian Encarnacion Strand, who has been unbelievable in spring training. A lot of people kind of looking him as potentially the first baseman of the future for this team, just to kind of, for when that day comes. But my big thing that I really wanted to look at is if you look generally at pipeline, if you look at, just baseball, Arm Layton, friend of the program, Clay Snowden, friend of the program, when they have their list, they have 2 and 3. Actually, yeah, they have 2 and 3 rotated from what you have. Actually, they have Cam Collier even lower than you have. You put Cam Collier as your number 2 prospect in the Reds top 25. Now, he is obviously very impressive. There's a reason people were so excited the Reds got him so late in the draft in that last year. Power through the moon. I saw him at Reds Fest this year, and he is stacked. He is built. For you, with Noelvi Marte getting this attention, even Edwin Arroyo getting this attention, and Spencer Steer being the everyday third baseman as the game plan right now, what was it about Cam Collier that jumped out to you to put him at 2 overall in this franchise?
So I think that for me, it was just the combination of his youth plus how advanced his hitting is. I mean, you just don't see guys his age do what he did. He graduated high school basically as a sophomore and enrolled in the premier junior college in all of the country and went and just crushed the ball as what would have been his junior year of high school. But he did it against college guys, and it wasn't the SEC, but Chipola it's probably the best junior college in the country for baseball. And I mean, he stood out among, guys much older than him. And I just think the guy can hit. And when you can hit, everything else gets a little bit easier. I think that the power is going to come along. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't really start hitting for real power until his, mid 20s, but I think it's going to come. And I just think he's a guy who can move really quick because of the bat. I think he's more athletic and better defensively than much of the national media does. Um, I don't know. I'm a believer. That's as simple as it is. I believe the guy's going to hit a lot, and he's going to get to the big leagues quick.
I agree, man. So Reds Fest this year, I watched a thing that he did with it was with Ellie, Hunter Green, and John Sadak, where they kind of were up on the stage and they were having a conversation, and they're like, "Well, who'd you model your game after?" And it was so weird as a third baseman. He said Ken Griffey Jr. because if you put them side by side, there's no similarities at all. But he's like, yeah, I've trained with him, and he's like helped me with my swing. He's kind of paraphrasing, of course, and it's like, oh, well, that doesn't hurt to have one of the greatest baseball players ever teach you with your swing. And so I like him because he gets it. Like it feels like he understands the game so well. Like you said, he's really young. He's hitting really well against college players, and I'm fascinated with his abilities. Just to see what he can do. And he's a lot of fun to cover. So I really like that list. That's why I was really curious what you put there. And you're absolutely right with the age there. Some of the other names I wanted to ask you about. I mentioned our contest today, Chase Petty, obviously the acquisition of the Sonny Gray trade last year, is a guy who had really, really impressive numbers last year. But for you, what are you looking for Petty to kind of make that step forward? Do you kind of see him? I'm trying to remember. Forgive me. You'll know this better than I will, obviously. Did he end the year last year in Double A in Chattanooga, or is he going to be in Chattanooga this year?
He'll be in Dayton this year. He
Okay.
ended the year in Dayton. He made a couple of starts. Um, you know, I I like his changeup more than many people do. He doesn't use it quite as much as his slider and his fastball. The thing that I want to see from him more this year is I just want to see him be a little bit more consistent within the strike zone. And that's very nitpicky because he threw a lot of strikes last year. But that's just kind of the next step that I want to see him take. And maybe mix in the changeup just a little bit more than he did last year. Because again, like I said, I like that pitch. I think that can be, at the very worst, an average pitch in the big leagues if he sticks with it. And that'll give him 2 above average to plus pitches with the fastball and the slider to go with a third average or better pitch. I mean that's a very good base to start with.
I agree. And so that's what I'm really excited about his upside. And I think obviously it's a prospect. We're going to say about everybody, but there's just something about the way he pitches and how young he is. You mentioned Collier's age, like he was drafted pretty young too. And as we kind of made this transition as well, we did get a really good question here in the chat. Kind of curious your thoughts. If Doug had to pick someone 15 to 25 range to make a major league impact, big league all-star caliber, who would it be? I have one that you can totally just destroy me if you disagree with, but I want to get yours first.
Okay, I think there's several guys in there that have that upside. They could be an all-star in that 15 to 25 range. I'll just say this: I love watching Carlos Jorge. Let me look real quick. I think that he's either the youngest or the second youngest guy in that range on the list. He spent all of last year playing out in Arizona, so he's going to make his full season debut this year. But he can hit. He's got power. He's a little bit undersized, so he's not going to hit for a ton of power probably. But I think he can hit 20 home runs.
Yeah.
He led the league in stolen bases last year. He's a plus runner. I really like his game. And he's a second baseman. I think that's a position that also gives you a little bit of favor just because it's not as deep as a position to shortstop or second base. I mean, and everything can change in 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We don't really know how that's going to play out, but I think it's probably an easier position to be named an all-star at than shortstop or third base, at least based on how things have gone the last couple of years and just the expectations that, especially at shortstop, that you're supposed to hit for now.
Yeah, I agree. I went with Jay Allen. I love his upside. I love his athleticism. I feel like as far as like he kind of, I know his hitting was up and down last year, but he is a 3-sport athlete. He's really, really fast. Obviously, it plays a part for him. But this is a guy last year who stole 40 bases in the minors. What was it actually total? Sorry, it was 43 bases between his 2 levels he played. I think he could be a big part of the big league club. Obviously, you want to see the strikeouts cut down, where he's striking out like 27% of the time. It's not ideal, but I really like Jay Allen. I think that like if he can kind of hearsay, if he can consistently hit the ball, he has a shot, which is such baseball obvious conversation.
All right, so here's where I yell at you
Okay.
because the question was 15 to 25 and Jay Allen's 13.
Oh, my bad. You're right. You're right.
Yes. Yes. So I didn't even consider Jay Allen because he wasn't eligible for the question. But I'll say this is the one thing I want to see from Jay Allen more than anything this year. I want to see more consistent power. He hit 3 home runs last year, and 2 of them came in April.
Oh,
So he hit
wow.
1 home run in the final 4 months of the season. He's got power potential. I would just like to see him tap into it a little bit more. That's what I'm looking for this year. I think that if he taps into the power a little bit more, then the rest of the hitting numbers are going to follow.
I like that. Yeah, I think that's a good point. So we do have a couple more prospect questions I want to get to. This has kind of filled up our thing here. First off, actually, what pizza did Doug make today? It's not a prospect question, but
So I didn't make any pizza today. I made 2 pizzas yesterday. The first one was not for me. It was cheese, pepperoni, mushrooms, bacon.
ooh, I like
Mine,
that.
mine was just ham and pepperoni. Mine was better.
I
Not
like
that I
it.
have any problem with bacon or mushrooms, but mine just it cooked better. When you're cooking with like actual fire, like I don't want to say hit or miss because I mean they're all I mean as long as you don't burn it, then you're fine. But there is a difference where 20 seconds longer or not long enough in there can really change whether the pizza is, a 7 or a 10.
Interesting. I'll keep
Yeah.
that in mind because I just make mine like in an air fryer now. My wife's obsessed with our air fryer. So we got one of those like big oven size ones. It's kind of cool. I like it. Mr. Juan asked this earlier in the show, but I wanted to get to it because of the what Christian Encarnacion Strand's doing this spring. Um, he asked, why is he not a top 100 prospect if he has 40 home run power?
So I am not sure that I necessarily agree with the general scouting idea behind this, but um, for the most part, scouts don't think he's going to hit for much average, despite the fact that he's hit 300 plus just about everywhere he's ever been since he started playing in college. You know, which is sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but you know I think that everywhere I looked that gave out like actual scouting grades for his hit tool put him at a 40, which in today's game, a 40 hit tool means you're going to be a 240 hitter.
Yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with that. You can be a very productive hitter hitting 240.
Kyle
But
Schwarber.
I think that when you combine that he's a quote unquote 40 hitter, along with the fact that for the most part, a lot of people think he's going to be at first base, that really diminishes your value. Now, I'll say this much: I think he can play third base. Um, if people only saw him play in the first half last year, I can completely understand the idea that hey, he's a first baseman. His fielding percentage was under 900 in the first half. He got a 4 or 5 game break in mid June, and when he came back, his fielding percentage was like 970. After he got traded to the Reds, he didn't make a single error at third base. He made it. I don't even know exactly what the defensive improvement he made was, but after that 4 day break, he stopped making errors at third base. Um, and so I think he's athletic enough to play at third base. So I probably have him rated higher than most other places do. Um, if you are a scout who thinks he's going to be a 240 hitter, maybe he's a fringe top 100 prospect. Um, that's here's the thing with the top 100 list. The difference between a guy ranked 75th and 150th is nothing.
Yeah,
It's all about it's all about how you're feeling that specific day. You gotta remember when you look at the top 100 list, it feels like the guy ranked 90th. I just hit my computer, so that was weird. The guy ranked 90th and the guy ranked 50th. Like you feel like there's a huge gap there. But when you remember there's 5,000, 6,000 eligible people for that list, the difference is very, very small. And so, I can understand why people could look at it and be like, oh, well, they're disrespecting this guy for putting him here or not putting this guy there. But I always say, look at the information that's below the name or next to the name rather than the number next to it. Because that's what's important. That's what's telling you what kind of player people expect this guy to be. How you rank them, that's just more of I prefer this over that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
For the record, I think that Christian Encarnacion Strand is going to hit more than 240. I'm not
yeah,
sure how much higher, but I think he's a better hitter than 240 in the long run. Maybe not as a rookie. I think that he does need to tighten up his swing zone a little bit more than it is right now. I think he does have a few struggles. There's areas you can attack him right now and get him out, and big league pitchers are going to be able to do that. He's going to have to make the adjustment, but just about everybody has to make the adjustment at some point.
yeah,
I don't.
absolutely.
It's not something I'm trying to say that he has to do it and nobody else does. Pretty much everybody does. But I think that eventually he'll make that adjustment, and he'll be more than a 240 hitter in my opinion.
So I got two more questions. We'll move to our next topic. This is from Pat McGooch. Wow, I can't believe I just said that on a podcast. Uh, Hector Rodriguez seems to have a good hit tool and can play center. Could you see him move up your list?
Yes, but just as a note on Hector Rodriguez, he had a pretty bad leg injury last year in the final month of the season. He's probably not going to play until mid-season this year, so we're not really going to get too much of a chance to see him out of the gate. He'll probably be back in Arizona probably till at least June. Um, he had a long road to recovery after leg surgery last year, so don't expect to see him at the start of the year. I like the hit tool. He's very fast. I wonder just about the power. If you don't hit 10 home runs in the big leagues, it's really tough to be an everyday player. So that's really the area where I'm kind of like, I'm not so sure. It's one of the same reasons that a guy like Michael Ciani never really climbed into the top 10, despite the fact that he's an elite defender and he can steal 50 bases. It's just how much could the bat really do? Was the bat going to be enough for him to be an everyday player? And it's the same question with a guy like Hector Rodriguez. I'd be very surprised if he ever were the top 10 prospect, just because there's always going to be that questions about, can he actually hit enough? Can he keep big league pitchers honest enough? And I think that's a question you're probably not going to know until he gets there.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then Clay, who asked a question earlier, said, what is your opinion on leaving these young guys in the minors so you can control them longer? I think we've had two recent memories where we've had like proof that like they're willing if they feel like a guy can contribute. But India and Leak, obviously.
Hunter Green and Nick Adola last year,
Yeah.
Jonathan India, Jose Barrero, Tyler Stevenson. Like, the Reds have not been a team that has done that, at least in recent memory. I do think that they did it with Nick Senzel, and I think that sucks. I don't like when teams do that. They can claim all they want that they don't do it. They know they do it. We know they do. Everybody knows they do it. They just can't say it out loud. If they say it out loud, then they're violating labor laws and contractual things, and that's bad. So they're never gonna come out and admit it, but they do it. But I don't think that the Reds. I mean, you can understand why they wouldn't do it with Tyler Stevenson back in, I don't know, was it 2021 or 20? I don't know. I can't remember.
2020 was like he came up during the COVID season.
Yeah, and but last year the Reds went into the season with. I mean, let's be real. They didn't expect to win. There was no expectations that the 2022 Reds were going to compete. And yeah, there were some injuries in the rotation. The Reds had limited options. They could have run anybody out there to be starting pitchers for a couple of weeks and seeing what happens. But they let Nick Lodolo go out there. They let Hunter Green go out there. And they could have played those stupid games with them. And yeah, they're pitchers, and pitchers aren't quite the same as hitters because, unfortunately, pitchers, they hurt their arms. And so you don't really know how this is all going to play out. You want to get, quote unquote, the bullets out of their arm while they've still got them. But yeah, I think that the Reds have shown in the last couple of years that they're willing to call guys up when they feel like they're ready. Jonathan India hadn't played in AAA.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, he's ready. We're doing it. Jonathan India wasn't even in big league camp to start that year.
You're right. Yeah.
They invited him to big league camp like mid-March after he had performed well on the backfields, and in a handful of games he got called up from the minor leagues to just play in big league games. So I don't know. I don't think that that's something the Reds are necessarily going to be doing. I definitely understand anybody who, let's just say Christian Encarnacion Strand keeps hitting.
Yeah.
And he doesn't make the team. I can see where people can be upset about that.
Sure.
But I also can see the legitimate argument that, hey, if he doesn't make the team, you know, and and especially if Joey Votto is going to be ready, or if Votto's only going to need, a short rehab stint in AAA just to kind of get those extra few at bats, then there's not as much playing time for Encarnacion and Strand. So it makes sense. It's not because we want to get that extra year. It's because it's better for his development.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, one thing we should point out before we move to our next topic, just because a guy makes the opening day roster doesn't really necessarily mean a whole lot in that circumstance. Like you said, like Christian Encarnacion Strand could make the opening day roster because Joey Votto's not ready. When Joey Votto's ready, where do you think he goes? And if he's not raking, like he's probably going to go back to, Louisville or Chattanooga or whatever it is. Like, I don't know. Are they still on the rule where they can't get called up from AA, or is that expelled now? Because the COVID stuff's kind of passed through.
I mean, you can get called up from AA.
Yeah. But like, you know what I mean though, right? Like, just because, a guy can make the everyday roster and be back in AAA, like when their season starts the next week, it's not just like a set in stone thing by any means. So, all right, here's some fun news, I guess. Todd Frazier will be throwing out the first pitch on opening day. Are you one of the many that's blocked by him on Twitter? Because I am, and I don't know why.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I am.
I mean,
I
don't necessarily know why, but I know when it happened, so I think I know why. I don't know why you would be blocked necessarily, but
yeah, I'm awesome.
Yeah, exactly. You were awesome. I'm not, but yeah, when he got traded, he pretty much blocked 90% of the Cincinnati sports media. So I don't know if it was because he didn't want to read bad opinions on himself, which is fine. I get that.
Sure.
Hey, do what you need to do to protect your own mental health. I'm totally fine with that. But Agreed. It was very weird to see that out of nowhere, everybody in Cincinnati was blocked that had ever written about Todd Frazier or the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah. I hope they get Teddy involved somehow in the first pitch. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, let Teddy catch it. He's the pride of my high school. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as again earlier, so with the Reds trivia question, we are here at the point where we can answer it now. And we're going to do a little WBC talk for the U.S. team plays. So the question was, Joey Votto is one of 12 professional Reds athletes to don the cover of Sports Illustrated in a Reds uniform. Who are the other 11? And our good friend Alex Wallace is our winner with Joey J, Claire Carroll, Ray McMillan, Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, George Foster, Deion Sanders, Ken Griffey Jr., Tom Seaver, Chris Sabo, and Clay Carroll. I don't know if any people really remembers the Deion Sanders cover. It's the coolest freaking SI cover ever. Oh my God, it's awesome. So, Doug, you're around my age. Do you remember the SI for kids when they would get like the cutout trading cards that were like in the middle of it? Yes. There was a year when Deion was on the cover of SI for kids in a Reds and Dallas Cowboys uniform, and he was all the cards. It was awesome. So I'll be a huge Deion guy. So Alex, thank you. Congratulations. You are the winner of the Chase Petty Bowman Inception Rookie Auto. If you could please go ahead and shoot a DM to the Riverfront or to me at TimDaniel518 with your address. I will get that sent out to you first thing tomorrow so we can get that in the mail to you as soon as possible. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit of World Baseball Classic before we wrap up here. So obviously the U.S. plays their first game last night against Great Britain. Against former Red Vance Worley, starting for Great Britain. First off, amazing jerseys. Way to go, way to go, GB. But I think I noticed the same thing everyone else did, and I'm sure you probably did too. But this is a team that's like, I mean, their lineup is incredible. You got 3 MVPs at the top of the order.
We're talking about Great Britain, right?
Yeah, Great Britain. Yeah, Klay Thompson's brother hitting homers off of Adam Wainwright's 70-mile-an-hour screwball. But, Team USA last night goes Mookie, Mike Trout, and Goldie is their like top 3. Nolan Arenado's hitting cleanup. Jeff McNeil, who won a batting title, is hitting 9th in the order. Like, the lineup is everything you dream of if you're putting together a fantasy baseball team where you play Diamond Dynasty on MLB The Show. But, man, that rotation, you're starting to... So, in your eyes... Do you think that the offense is going to be enough to cover the pitching to potentially repeat, or do you feel like the pitching is just going to nip them in the bud? Because I watched all 3 Japan games and they look awesome. They look really good.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: any given day, man. Like, you know, we see, or especially like early in spring training, you'll see teams play college, like Major League Baseball teams face off against
Mhm.
college teams. Those college guys, I mean, if they had to play a 162 game schedule, they'd win like 10 games, if that.
Yeah.
But if you've got the right pitcher on the right day, it's over. And these guys are all good enough. At least, especially among the real contenders, they're all good enough to have that day. It doesn't matter who's hitting on the other side. Um, I mean, but if you want to talk about a team that looks really good, about Venezuela.
Oh my god, man, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't. After watching Adam Wainwright, I'm not feeling too great about sending him out there against some of those teams. But I mean, he's always found a way. He's never been that. I don't want to say ever, but I mean, he's a guy that I feel can get away with 89, 90 miles an hour because that's not really his real pitch. That's not what he is
Yeah.
known for. It's not what he goes to. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, especially as they start to allow starters to go deeper.
Yeah, I know.
That'll really help when, you know, can you save your bullpen? If let's say you've got games that are 2 days apart, you don't have to worry about your bullpen. But if you've got back to back days, maybe certain guys aren't available. But if you can get your starter to throw 6 innings because he's got more leeway because the pitch count gets longer the further into the tournament you go, that could really help out too.
Yeah, I definitely have worries, especially like you said, like Venezuela looked awesome in that game against the Dominican Republic yesterday. Chasing Alcantara out of the game was unreal. And then Japan. So I just so happened to be up because of my daughter. And so when I'm up in the morning and I turn them on like the sixth inning, it's always like they're up 9-1 on
Right.
Australia. And you're like, oh my God. Otani's like 4 for 5 with a double. And you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I feel like Japan might be my pick at this point. But like you said, a lot of tournament to play. So
Yeah. I just want Team USA to hire a graphic designer and give them new jerseys. Those things are god awful. I I
yeah.
I don't like them. I mean, they're slightly better than Great Britain, but barely. Basically, like if you speak English as your first language in your country, you've got the worst jerseys in the World Baseball Classic. They're really bad. They're really bad. I don't like them.
Yeah. Not in love with them either. I do love Mark DeRosa was like, I'll be the manager. I got to get a goatee now because I'm the manager. So props to Mark DeRosa for that. I like Ken Griffey Jr. as the hitting coach. That's kind of fascinating. You know,
Hey, anytime I get to see Griffey, that's fine. I'm
same.
down.
Yeah.
I don't even
Like
even if he's just coaching, I don't care because it just brings back so many fun memories.
my all-time favorite player ever. And the happiest day of my childhood might have been the day he was traded to the Reds. I know how it ended, but
It ended great, Tim. It ended great.
yes.
I
But
don't
when
want to
you're
talk
10
about it.
years old and your hero gets traded to your favorite baseball team,
Yes.
it's pretty fascinating. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap this week up. I'm so happy to have the show back. I'm so happy Doug agreed to be our first guest. The chat was awesome tonight. I wish I could have got to every question. You guys had so many, and it was so fun. So Doug, thank you so much for hanging out again. I really appreciate it. If you're not already, which if you're on here, you probably are, make sure you give Riverfront Cincy a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Like I said, if you want to become a Patreon member and hang out with us in the Slack, patreon.com/RiverfrontCincy. Don't forget to go to redsminorleagues.com. Support Doug. Become a Patreon member for Doug. Gets really, really good content on the minor league organizations there as well. Follow us on Twitter at Late Reds and follow me on Twitter at TimDaniel518. And then, of course, give Doug a follow at DougDirt24. So this is awesome. Thank you guys so much. Can't wait to do this as the season goes on. And next week, I haven't confirmed if everything works out as far as his flight because he's going into Phoenix that day. Our good friend and yours, John Sadak, will be on Late Night Reds. All right, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.